Hey everybody, welcome back to Startup Happy Hour. I'm your host, Diana Chen, and I'm here with our guest today, Patrick Gardner. He's the CTO at Timekeeping, which is a platform that frees lawyers from timekeeping, which as a former lawyer, I very much know the pain points of that. So I'm really excited to talk to Patrick more about that. I'm going to bring him on and let him tell you more about Timekeeping. Welcome, Patrick. How's it going?
Hi, Diana. Thanks for having me. It's going well.
Thanks so much for being here. So I know that introduction didn't do Time by Peen justice, so I'm going to give you a chance to tell everybody exactly what Time by Peen is.
Sure. So really, we're trying to give the world back time through allowing people to focus on where they want to spend their time versus all of the necessary things of running a business. So we're using a lot of AI and machine learning to do it. We're starting with the legal industry just because the value of time there is so high with the billable hour. But really, we're trying to understand how people work and help them work more efficiently and automate things that they don't want to spend their time on, which for lawyers is billing.
For sure. So let's just take the lawyer example to begin with. Tell me a little bit more about how does it actually work day to day? So, I'm just thinking back when I used to be a lawyer in my past career, so much of the day is spent on timekeeping, whether that's writing down your time and then entering everything into the system at the end of the day, or more advanced law firms might have a program where you can hit a button to start and stop your time and that'll track it that way. So tell me how Time by Peen works if a law firm were to implement this.
Sure. Yeah, and actually it was kind of a cruel joke. When I started Time by Ping on the last day of onboarding, they had us keep track of our time like a lawyer would. And if you could imagine, as an engineer or in technology, you don't even think about that, right? Your days start and stop and are very fluid. But if you were a lawyer at a big law firm, you'd be keeping track of your time in 6-minute increments and putting that on your bill to many different clients. So kind of how lawyers do this today, it depends on whether you're a poor associate or a lucky partner, but really kind of the state of the art is a digital stopwatch. So if you work at a big law firm, you may have a program that allows you to manually enter time digitally or to start and stop a timer. And that's really kind of the state of the art. And you can just imagine the cognitive load of having to think about what you're doing and keep track of your time. And what ends up happening for a lot of lawyers is they don't do a very good job keeping track of their time. The partner will usually have to chase you down every week or every month to release your time so they can bill for it. And you end up making a lot of stuff up, right? You'll miss time, you'll underbill, and you'll do that. So where Time by Ping's really different, we kind of bring a more modern approach to this. We'll sit there and we'll look at where you're spending your time. How much time are you spending on this Word document? How much time are you spending on this phone call? How much time are you spending in different meetings? And we'll basically capture all that. We'll automatically code it to what client that is that you need to bill it to, put all the legal codes and descriptions and narratives on it, and you don't have to think about that. So at the end of your day, if you're a lawyer, you can look, you have your timesheet prepared from Time by Ping using our machine learning and our data capture, and you can just spend 2 or 3 minutes, revise anything you want, release it, and you're done and off.
Got it. So tell me a little bit more about the behind the scenes technology. How does it work? How does the system track when I'm on the phone, when I'm drafting an email for, and then how does it know which client I'm drafting an email for or who I'm talking to on the phone?
Yeah, that's where part of the magic is. So we have a lot of connection with different legal technology, and a lot are big applications. So one big area that a lot of lawyers use the Microsoft suite. That's kind of the de facto standard. So they're using Excel or Microsoft Word or scheduling their meetings all through Outlook. So we're tying into Outlook to understand your meeting calendar. We're tying in there to understand all the email that you send and receive, and we can see how much time you're spending on each of those. Then we also have other integrations in the phone systems. So for example, we integrate with the Cisco call manager so we can see all the phone calls that you do. So we have a number of things, and we primarily do that by running software on the lawyer's desktop, so we'll understand to do that. We have a number of service connections to do all that. And that, if you will, is kind of the raw materials. So as you can imagine, that's very granular, and you can imagine all the things that you're doing on your computer. That's going to be a long list and not really usable or intelligible. So what we do is we send that to the back-end system, and we'll actually go through and look at patterns of behavior. We'll do natural language processing on what you're writing in those emails or what's in those documents. And from that, now we can start to write what's called a narrative in legal, but to the rest of us, it's just a billing description. So we can go through and do that. And we can also understand the phases of it. So there's different codes that you add for the phases of litigation that you're doing that a lot of clients want. So we send all those raw materials to the back end. we make sense of it. So rather than presenting the thousands of little entries that we see every day from the raw capture side, we'll apply the machine learning pieces, we'll generate the narratives, and then we'll send that back to the lawyer so it's a more approachable list of what they want to put on their bill.
Got it. And so from the lawyer's side, all they have to do is download an application, like any other application, to their computer. And then how long will it take the software to start to understand the lawyer's patterns, their clients, their emails, and things like that? Or will the software actually retroactively look at what the lawyer has produced in the past, and then the lawyer can start using that software immediately?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So the lawyer can use it right out of the box and start doing that. There's a lot of, without getting all the legal technology, there's these things called document management systems in the legal industry that store all the emails and documents that most lawyers will file their documents or emails to. So we actually take advantage, and we have an API integration with these systems. And so if you're working on a Word document, we'll ask the document management system, what client does this belong to? And it'll tell us that. So even as we're bootstrapping the machine learning, we get this from other integrations we have. And then the system starts learning right away. So as soon as the user goes through and releases that time, so maybe there's a document we've never seen before or an email address we've never seen before, once they release their time and release the bill for it, our system picks that up, and now it'll start learning and seeing the patterns over time as you use it. So typically within the first day or two, the machine learning will start kicking in, and we'll start seeing what the lawyer's doing.
Wow, that's awesome. So tell me about some of the other applications that the software can be used for in the future. Right now, I know you're focused on the legal industry. What are other industries that really suffer from this timekeeping business right now that could benefit from your software?
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit for this. So there's obviously other professions that are dominated by the billable hour. So whether you think about consulting, tax, there's many other industries we want to go into, but my wife is a freelance copy editor, and she has to keep track of her time. She has to keep track in terms of words changed. She has to keep track of documents and different engagements she's working on and create a bill. She really wants us to get going and get Time by Ping working for her. And even within Time by Ping, we use our own software in-house to keep track of our time, just to understand where we're spending time as engineers or product managers or salespeople. So we actually have adapted it and use it within our flow. So I think it's a really useful tool for any professional, even if you're not in the billable hour, to understand where you're spending your time and really look, is that matching your strategy? Are you actually doing what's important? So we have big plans to take this much broader for other professional industries, but also just broader into the market as well.
Gotcha. And I know within the legal industry, that's all I can really speak to. There has been a lot of debate and discussion around, do we need the billable hour? Does this make sense? Can we shift into other models? And personally, I think there are certain parts of the law that pretty much have to function under the billable hour. There's not really a better way to do it. But having been in sort of like working with the legal industry for a little bit now, what are your views on how you see the legal industry progressing into the future? Do you see the billable hour being as big of a thing in 5-10 years, or do you see these models shifting because maybe this isn't working or this isn't the best way?
Yeah, it's been fascinating for me to learn a whole new space getting into legal in the last year. I think so to answer your question directly, I think legal will be shifting away from the billable hour. Not for everything, but you'll start to see a shift away from it. So any of you who have had the pleasure of using a lawyer for services, it's a very disconcerting engagement. You go in and you'll talk to a lawyer, and they'll tell you, an hourly rate that they have, and it's in the hundreds of dollars, right? So if you're lucky, it's $300, and it's usually more than that. And you don't know what the bill is going to be ahead of time. And because you're being billed hourly, you always have a doubt in your mind of the incentives. Like, is the lawyer really trying to work as efficiently? Or are they overbilling me? And it's really hard to know what you're getting into ahead of time. So you have this big problem of a mismatch of incentives. Like, in some ways, the lawyer is not fully motivated, because if they bill you 3 hours, they're going to get 3 hours worth of their hourly rate, versus if they complete it in 2 hours, they get less money. So it's good for them, but bad for the client. So one of the big things that we're going to try to do with Time by Ping is understand how people work. So say you were a real estate lawyer at a major law firm. Maybe to do a commercial agreement for 10,000 square feet, a lawyer who's really good and works really efficiently, they could do that in 5 hours versus someone who's not could be in 10 hours. And so now we could actually arm the law firm with that data to help drive productivity of their lawyers. But from a client side, you could actually get into a flat rate where you just know how much it's going to cost you up front. So I think there is, like, with the technology we're building and understanding how people work, we can help those lawyers work more efficiently, but also we can help kind of solve this incentive misalignment between the consumers and the producers in legal, which I think would just help everyone get a lot more trust in the industry.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's a really useful application of it. And nowadays, everybody is shifting more towards more and more data and more analytics, the better. And that's sort of like what you just talked about. Is that in Time by Ping's future plans to sort of like branch out into this data business and maybe publish this data for people so that you can help create more transparency and visibility, which I think is really lacking in a lot of industries that use the billable hour?
Yeah, so definitely like understanding that data and putting it to other good use is in our roadmap and something we're working on. We're probably not going to go into publishing too much of it. We really want to respect the privacy and really help that law firm be the best they can. We will aggregate and anonymize it so firms can compare themselves to each other in different practices, but also within the firm. But really, we're trying to give compelling value back to the firm, but really make lawyers' individual lives better and make them more productive. So I'll never forget the first week I started at Time by Ping. One of our customers came in and she talked about using the product and how she didn't have to think about keeping her time anymore, and she had a half hour back in her day. And that's already just what we're doing now for just automating billing. You can imagine if we could help that lawyer, we could help him or her actually do things in less time so they could either increase their billable time, spend more time with family, wherever they want to do with that. So that's a huge piece of what we're trying to do as well.
For sure. Tell me a little bit more about other players in your industry. So I know there are other timekeeping softwares out there. Tell me how you're maybe similar to them, but also different.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are other timekeeping solutions, but I don't even really view them as competition. And I know that sounds kind of arrogant, but they're really kind of the equivalent of a digital stopwatch. They don't go into the automated capturing of those activities and then the processing of them to make them ready to release for something that you would actually invoice a client for. So while there are a lot of competitors out there, they're typically from older companies that are not as innovative. So they're usually private equity held or in larger conglomerates. So they're not pushing the state of the art. And that's been one interesting thing for me coming from a security background, which is some of the most complicated software and technology you can deal with is you keep up with attacks across all the platforms. I spent 20 years doing that. And coming into legal, it was really fascinating how the legal industry hasn't taken full advantage of a lot of the other industries that have been completely modernized by technology. So I think there's just a lot of things we can apply in legal that have been used in many other verticals for huge dramatic changes. So that's the exciting part of just being able to make such a big industry and such a big impact.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have to tell me twice about how antiquated the legal industry is. It's probably one of the most antiquated out there. So I think you guys started in January 2020, or is that just when you joined the team?
So I started in January 2020. The company had been around for about 4 years prior to that. So that's when I joined.
Got it. And so how has, I have to ask this question for everybody. How has COVID impacted your business? You started sort of right before COVID hit, and I'm sure transitioned into a remote and work from home. So how has that impacted you personally? And then how has it impacted the business?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been fascinating. So what my life was like, I came from a large corporate job before, and so I had flown 200,000 miles every year for as long as I can remember. And so when I joined Time by Ping, our offices were in San Francisco off Union Square, and I lived down in Los Angeles with my family. So on a very personal front, I'd been commuting and being in San Francisco 4 days a week. So when COVID happened, that stopped. And when COVID hit, we had 90% of our employees were in our San Francisco office every day. So it was very personable, very intimate. We were all there in person, and I wanted to be a part of it. So I was happy to travel up to San Francisco. But when COVID hit and everyone was remote, all of a sudden it didn't matter where you were. Obviously, time zone still mattered, but everyone we had was still on the West Coast. And it was really interesting to see how we functioned as a team after everyone got over the initial worry and we were all just sheltering in place. Productivity went crazy. I just it was fascinating to me to like see our velocity and how much we were able to get done. Like in March and April and May, no one was going anywhere or doing anything. You were kind of stuck with your immediate household. We didn't know what was next in the world, and like our velocity almost doubled over those months, which was just interesting to see. And then like as we got into early summer and other pieces, all of us started to get fatigue and started to try to figure out what the new normal or work-life balance was. So we went through all those pieces, but we really kept a lot of great team events. So we kept the camaraderie there. It was different. The Zoom fatigue we all feel was very real, but like we got to know each other really well. We still spent time getting to know each other as people and families, and so that was interesting. And then on the commercial side with our customers, everyone was kind of circling the wagons in Q1 or Q2. We actually had some new sales in Q2 and Q3, which, as I talked to my peers and other startups, that was kind of unique. So definitely there was a drawback on that, but because fundamentally we're giving law firms and people back revenue and time, even in an economically challenged environment, that was a huge piece. And now as we're hopefully exiting COVID, right, there's a lot of legal activity picking up. So COVID hasn't, it's definitely dramatically changed how we work as a team. But we're still trying to keep everyone on the West Coast, still have everyone, at least in the same time zone. We're figuring out what it'll look like when we get back. And on the customer side, things slowed for a quarter when people were figuring it out, but it didn't impact us as too much as a lot of other companies.
That's good. Yeah, I was thinking about that before a call and trying to figure out if COVID would have had a negative or a positive impact on a business like yours. And I could kind of see it going either direction. Now that people are at home, maybe they need more support with timekeeping. And so a software like yours really comes in handy. But on the other hand, I could also see, and this is one of the problems with the whole work from home COVID thing is that you don't really have work hours anymore. It's like you work around the clock. And so I on the flip side, I could also see lawyers being like, well, I have more time now to work on my billables and so less need of this. So I was just kind of curious to see which way it actually went.
Yeah, it was pretty neutral. I mean, there's been some pluses and minuses, but overall it's been pretty neutral. But it's just been interesting. Coming from a larger company, like when I joined Ping, we had no network, right? There was no physical network. There was no servers, which just was crazy when I think about my old world. So it didn't impact us too much. We hit the ground running. We didn't miss a beat. There was only like really one system or thing we needed to set up to support people working remote. And that's true of even the software we build, right? It's a SaaS product. So that fits very well in a world where people are going remote and distributed. So I think while it slowed things down for a quarter, we're actually on the side where it's been beneficial now.
That's awesome to hear. So you mentioned that you came from a really large corporation. You actually were the SVP there for, you worked there for 20 years and you were the SVP. So I guess my first question is, what was it about Time by Ping that made you leave the company that you were with for 20 years? Like there must have been something there that really drew you in. And then tell me just about the journey of going from working at a large corporation for 20 years to going to a relatively early stage startup.
Yeah. So I've always been an innovator and a builder. And so like why I do what I do and why I get up in the morning is I love building products and technology. In that moment where like you build software and you actually see a user get to use it and do something that they never thought was possible or just really like impresses them, like that moment is just so cool. From the technology side and then from like making a difference in someone's life is really awesome. So I got to do that for a long time. I was in the security industry working for Symantec, and I started testing boot sector infectors for those of you that are a little older, the Michelangelo virus and stuff like that. It was fun to get to look at 16-bit code and put floppies in. My first job was our repair disk went from one floppy disk to three, so I was sitting there in the lab swapping them back and forth. So I got to do that, and then like as security grew with the company as an engineer, then later years in management. And I was really lucky. Security is a fun space in that it's a mano a mano. You have an attacker and it's a cat and mouse game. So the technology and attacks were always changing. When I started, it was just self-replicating code, and then you had stack manipulation, and now the crazy attacks we're dealing with of multi-stage, multi-part ROP attacks where there's no code injection, it's just stack manipulation. It's crazy when you think about the complexity. So it's fun from a technology side. It's also fun because like as technology changed from being Windows 9X and DOS into the Windows dominated world, into Mac and OS X picking up, into mobile, from BlackBerry and Symbian to Android and iOS today. It was just a fun problem, and I was able to innovate and create new products. And I was actually able to create a completely new product at Symantec from scratch, which is rare to do in a large company. So long-winded way of saying, like, at the end of my time at Symantec, Symantec was focusing less on creating new products. It was more on optimization. There was a lot of private equity interests, and the company was going to be split in three parts. The services division was being sold off, the enterprise division was being sold off, and the consumer business was going to be the remaining company. And so I was starting to look for something else because I wanted to innovate and build more. And when you've been part of a larger organization, you've learned a lot. You've benefited from like some brilliant, amazing people, but you never know how much is you versus the systems and organization around you. And so I was really looking for a challenge where I could take what I have learned, keep learning, but also apply what I had learned and do it in a smaller, more intimate environment. And that's what led me to Time by Ping. It was a different space. It's nice to be out of security for a little bit. Security so gosh awful complicated. Makes it fun on the technology side, but like man, to make a difference, there's a lot of hype and snake oil out there in the security market. It's a very crowded market, so to differentiate it's hard, and a lot of customers can't tell how well the products do. And what attracted me to Ping was really two things. One, I always thought a noble calling was keeping the world safe, which is what we did at Symantec. And at Time by Ping, we're trying to give the world back time. And that's just so cool because at the end of the day, security is a fear or compliance buy, right? Like you want to, I mean, it's good, you want to feel safe, but the idea of selling an opportunity of giving the world back time was really cool. And when I met just the people at Time by Ping and saw the impact we could make on the industry, it was really incredible. So that's what attracted me there, the challenge, the ability to get into something very early, and the amazing people and the mission that we're on.
That's awesome. I'm also curious to hear some of the changes that you experienced and some of the learnings that you've had since moving over to Time by Ping. And so, my first question is: when you were at Symantec, you were the SVP, and now you're the CTO. So, both positions of leadership. What have you learned or observed to be different as you've moved from a place of leadership at a large corporation to now leading a team at a startup?
Yeah. It's interesting, like everyone has these notions of startups before you actually get into it, and everyone's experience is different, but I had my own romantic notion of what I thought a startup would be. So I had this vision that like, okay, the whole company's 30 people, we have 20 in product and engineering, this will be really easy and I'll spend half my time coding. And so that's what I thought. And I was able to get very hands-on and technical. So one of the big differences is when you're a general manager, an SVP, I was running a 400-person division, so my ability to touch things was on a technical level day to day very different. And you lose some of your sharpness as you're managing other people. You have some brilliant people that you work with. You have amazing assets, amazing capital. So like your war chest and intellectual property and people assets are just huge at a large company. But you're there strictly to lead, and you're leading through multiple levels of leadership and management. So really, it's around like bringing out the best in people and helping the leaders. You're not teaching functional skills as much. You're teaching more leadership, and you're ensuring you have a really good business plan to see commercial success and growth for your product. So that's what it's like being in a large company. It's an interesting challenge. There's lots of great aspects of it. When I went into Time by Ping, it's very different. There were genuine gaps in like our skill sets, and there were problems that we didn't have people that knew how to solve them. We had great engineers and good people, but just you don't have the wealth of experience there. So you're figuring things out for the first time. There's no status quo way of doing things. So everything is incredibly liberating and incredibly undefined at the same time. Just little things like, I know every engineer loves Jira, but like at Symantec, there was a whole team that managed Jira. So if you wanted to change a story type or change a workflow, that would be a Herculean effort that even me as an SVP would have to like put personal capital on for a month or two to get changed. When you go in a startup, like you can change the tool that you have, you can change the configuration. Your ability to just change things as your needs change are so cool. So I had to kind of recalibrate to like in a nice way, not worrying about like the corporate bureaucracy and all the change management, but really thinking about what was important and affecting us this quarter, and really driving through what process did we need to set up, how did we need to work to get done, what were we missing on the team, which went in a lot of pieces. Like recruiting is also incredibly important at a startup, where at a larger company it's less important. You're not going to change the percentage of people as quickly in most larger jobs, but in a startup, you're always building the team. You're always you don't have there's no continuity plans. There's no backups, right? You are a single point of failure, which is fun. Like if you like having the ball and you like having that pressure to deliver and learn and grow and stretch, it's really incredible, but you got to be ready for that. So I could keep rambling, but those are some of the bigger changes that I saw.
Got it. Yeah. And so you said before you joined Time by Pain, you kind of had this romanticized view of what working at a startup would be like. You maybe thought half your day would be spent coding and then the other half managing people. So now that you're here, what does your day to day look like?
It varies month to month and depending on where we are as a team. So there are some things I have a lot of technical depth and expertise in. Unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of my background is in Windows environments and also cloud services. So as it gets into like administering our cloud services, I get heavily involved there. When there's Windows environmental or setup issues in law firms or with our software, I get heavily involved there. So I still spend a lot of time on the technical side, less from the implementation, but pretty heavy in the architecture and design, in the approach, and just thinking like I always try to think about like, are we making engineers' life as easy as possible? So that's really how I view my job. If I'm giving engineers all the right context, I'm giving them the right tools to do their best work and to learn and grow, I'm doing my job well. So that's where I'm spending my time. And, so I'm spending about 70% of my time trying to give the right context, make the right decisions to grow the business and making their lives simpler. And then the other part of my time rolling up my sleeves and pitching in and helping out where I have some special knowledge or expertise. And that's really fun. Like I think you earn sweat equity with the team. Um, Everyone likes a leader who's in the trenches and they're willing to do anything. And I tell everyone, and they laugh at me, but I really mean it. Like, if the most important thing I could do, or I could help the team, would be like cleaning the bathrooms, I'd be happy to do that. Like, so I think it always helps to have that humility to remember you're just like we all have different roles on the team, and to really help with that. So it's an interesting mix of where I get to spend my time, parts on team building, parts on the leadership, parts on doing things. Um, but it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, looking back over the last year, what would you say has been like the number one most shocking thing for you that you did not expect coming into the startup? And then also, I'm also curious too for you personally, like what are your favorite things about working at a startup as opposed to a large corporation? And then maybe what are some things that you miss about working at a large corporation?
Sure. Um, so the most surprising thing, which maybe sounds obvious in retrospect, was making sure you weren't trying to do too much at once. Um, when I came into Ping, I was learning the industry, I was learning our technology stack, I was learning the people, and I knew I had a lot to learn. I came in very humble, and um, I was never critical of the past decisions. I in some ways like honor them and hold them up because they're the they did the hard work of setting up a company. I can't imagine the incorporation, all the crazy stuff you do in your first year, and they got us to where we were. So I have a very much a reverence for what was done before. So I was trying to learn all these pieces, and as you're learning your team and your people, what technology, technical debt or however you want to call it, whatever pieces need to change, and you're learning what customers want need to get done. I made the huge mistake of just trying to go way too fast and trying to do too much all at once. And sometimes I was wrong in what we were trying to do because it wasn't what customers actually wanted, even though that's what they were saying. I went faster than some people could keep up for. There was more of the technology that needed to evolve and change than I had fully gotten aware of or seen some of the issues. So I think it was the biggest surprise to me. It was very easy to go too fast. And what ends up happening when you try to do 10 things all at once, and really you only have capacity for 5, all 10 of those are not done well, and they're not done in a way that you don't have to revisit them. So the biggest mistake I made was started too many initiatives, tried to move on too many fronts at once, and really like it's almost funny or tragic. When I look back at my quarter one plan, it's what should have been my year one plan, and we got most of that year one plan done, but it took longer to do that. So just underestimating the challenges, and it wasn't any of the technical challenges were particularly hugely hard research problems that had never been solved in the industry before, but just building a company and a team and a technology base while the plane's still flying, right? You're still selling, you're still acquiring customers, you're still growing while you're trying to do all those. So it's very easy to try to do too much. So that was the first biggest learning that I had. Let's see. Another question you asked was around like, what are some of the things I miss from a bigger company, or pros and cons of a smaller and bigger company? One of the things that makes you really successful in a larger company is your ability to punch over your weight class or muster resources and help beyond just your team. So, I was at a 20,000 person company, and so there was an entire leadership and employee development department. There was a top talent development program in track. There was huge, a huge amount of salespeople, thousands of salespeople. You had connections into like almost any company at any level you wanted to in the world. And so your ability to be a force multiplier and maybe get more resources and time than you were on your budget or you should have was huge to your success. But the effect was you could have an outsized impact and really move extremely quickly and get a lot of resources on your team. So that's really cool. And I miss that about a larger company. And also you just have the benefit of experience. So there's not an existential threat for most larger companies. Like they will be there next quarter when they're, making 30 cents on the dollar for everything they sell and billions of dollars are coming in every year. Like how bad can it be? Right. That's not true in startups. And so you just have like a huge amount of people and tenure that have been there. Like people understand the code. You have people who have been working with these code or products for over a decade. And that continuity and that depth and that experience is really pretty cool. But with that comes all the bad things of a large company. You have inertia. You have people who love that product even if the world's moved on from it. You have sometimes a lack of energy. And my company wasn't particularly old, but like you start having generational misses. So like if you don't hire and grow as much, your product will look like your demographics of your employees. So at a startup, some of the nicer things have been just the feedback cycles you can get. Like I can have a meeting or a support case with a call at 8 o'clock in the morning. I can either go look at the code or talk to someone on the team at 9 o'clock, and we can have it in their hands by noon, and they can tell me whether it works or not or does what they wanted. Like there's no intermediaries. You just go, right? So you can solve real problems and get real feedback in like that tight of loop. It's Symantec on a good day, that's a quarter, right? So it's just so different. And there's so many, like you have account managers and you have product specialists and you have support people, and then you have like change control on the customer side. So like it adds up. So your ability to move very quickly is very cool. And people feel ownership. Like a lot of people, I was at a large company where for the majority of my time there, it felt like a family, and people had a lot of pride in their product, and it was their product, but they didn't own the company. So there was ownership of the product, but not of the company. At a startup, everyone you believe in the dream, or you should believe in the dream of what you're trying to do and the change you're trying to make in the world. And there's an ownership where you're going to share in that success in a meaningful way, which really isn't the case in large companies. Yes, you may have RSUs. Yes, you may have a bonus, but if you're one of 20,000, how much is what you do directly going to affect how the company grows? So those are some of the bigger like differences I've seen between the two.
For sure. And so looking back now over the last year, what would be your number one biggest piece of advice for somebody who's been at a large corporation for a while and wants to make that transition into a startup?
I think you've got to be ready to like challenge yourself and grow and innovate. And that's not saying you need to destroy your life or work 100 hours a week, but you got to be up for it. There are going to be genuine times when you need to pull through and solve something maybe you haven't seen before, or get something done where the company will be in a materially worse place if you don't solve that problem and get it done. So you've got to be up for that challenge. You got to buy into the mission and be willing to have that that chip on your shoulder and that mark on your back. Because at a startup, there's no, like, if you're an early stage startup, there's no hiding. Everyone's going to see what you do. Everyone's going to know what you do. And if you're not adding compelling value, it's going to be very uncomfortable. So you got to be ready for that. You can balance it with your work life and other pieces, but you have to have that urgency and fire. If you've lost that urgency and fire, it's not going to be the right gig for you.
I think that's really good advice. And then what's in the future for you? Are you just 100% in the startup world now, and you're going to be in this world forever? Are you, going to take the urge for innovation even further and become a founder one day, or are you like, this is enough, I'm back to a large corporation?
No, I'm loving being in the world of entrepreneurs in startups. So I am mentoring a number of companies on the side, and seeing people like just pre-institutional investment and forming companies. So I'm finding that very invigorating and fun to see founders and do that. What's in the future for me is, like, I really want to build Time by Ping into a multi-product, multi-industry platform. I have a lot of admiration for what a company like ServiceNow has done, or like Salesforce has done, to where they've created a technology platform, and there's always like there's harder things to do in technology. And I think creating like compilers, class libraries, or multi-product platforms is really like the hardest things you can do in engineering, and it's also where you can have the biggest impact on the world. So from a technology side, like really building that out, like making sure we get all of our fundamentals right at Time by Ping. We have a super solid technology base, and getting to that point where you can really play and innovate at a crazy fast pace. So we're not there yet, but that's what we're working on, is to really build this as a technology platform. And it just becomes fun when you can start, building new products for new industries, seeing those users' faces light up, and like giving them back their time or doing something they never thought was possible, and doing that at a rate of like a new product a quarter. Like, so that's really what my future holds. I want to continue to like stay active in security consulting and other pieces, because I do still love security, but at the same time, like, my calling is here at Time by Ping to like turn this into that platform, and let what we're doing touch many industries beyond just legal.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see where Time by Ping goes in the next, just year. I mean, like you said, startups move so fast that you could be a completely different company just by the end of 2021. That's very exciting. All right, so tell people a little bit more about who Patrick is outside of Time by Ping and work and all these smart things that you just talked about. Like, what are your hobbies? What are some interesting, fun facts about you that you can share? Tell people more about who you are as a person.
Sure. So my family is very important to me, and this is another thing you'll find with all of us at Time by Ping. So I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school and a son who's a seventh grader. We really enjoyed the COVID time together. So we've been lucky that our kids are fairly independent and doing fairly well with Zoom school. So, being a dad and a family member is a huge part of who I am. As far as like hobbies or fun things, I love fixing and building things. So when COVID hit, we had like a spat of appliances that died, and I was at home, so I figured, why don't I fix this? So I, in short order, had to replace the motor and the control board in my washing machine, and then like a week later, the oven died, so I had to like resolder some pieces on the rectifier board for that, and then a week after that, the dishwasher decided it was going to die too, so I had to replace the control panel on that, and then my old pickup truck died, so I had to redo the ignition module on that. So I love fixing things. I have a bright career in appliance repair and automotive repair in case this doesn't work out. And then I have a few hobbies. I'm an avid cyclist, so I get out as much as I can and ride a few thousand miles a year. And then my current obsession is fishing. So I live down here in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of amazing ocean fishing down here. So those are some of my fun things outside of work.
Very cool. It sure is a good thing that you're handy, because it would have been a real headache to have to call in a handyman to come fix all this stuff during COVID and, with everything going on. So also I don't know why this thought crossed my mind, but I was going to say, are you sure these things broke or?
Yeah, I'm sure they broke.
Okay. All right. So to wrap this up, I just have a couple of fun random questions for you. The first one is, given that we're in this COVID work from home situation, you can work from anywhere in the world, assuming, it didn't matter that you were all on the West Coast for work and things like that. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you want to live?
So I would definitely like live and work from Tuscany for a year. Like just the Tuscan hillsides are amazing. I speak half Italian and have some relatives in northern Italy, but I would definitely live in Italy and work from there if I could.
Awesome. Yeah. And then if you could go back and redo college knowing what you know now, what is one thing you would do differently?
That's a very interesting question. So in college, I was double majoring in computer engineering and biology, and I got my internship at Symantec and never finished my biology degree. But I think if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have initially tried going into biomedical engineering, which was just kind of being defined when I was exiting school. But there's just so much. If you look at the biotech companies and what they're doing, it would have been a very interesting career too. So there's still a part of me that has a fascination with that space. I don't think I'll ever go into it professionally, but just the ability to take what we're doing in technology and apply it to medicine, and it's fascinating for me, like the difference we can make for humanity there. So that would be one thing I do over again.
Well, it's never too late.
Very true.
All right. Well, before you go, Patrick, tell people where they can find you if they want to connect with you personally and continue this conversation, and also how they can learn more about Time by Ping. And if they're, if any lawyers are listening or anyone in a billable industry that's listening, how can they get in contact with you, maybe get a demo or learn more about the product?
Yeah. So our website is www.timebyping.com. So we have all the information about the product, and if you'd like to get in touch with us there. And on LinkedIn, you can just find me at LinkedIn, Patrick_A_Gardner. So I have all my contact information up there. And yeah, this has been fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in as always. We'll be back again soon with another episode of Startup Happy Hour.